Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four. They've been around since the 60s and you can tell. The leader's power is he stretches loads, the guy who can go on fire is called the Human Torch, one of them has a catchphrase. But they've stood the test of time in the comics and individually or together are stronger than you may think. They've had some amazing writers like Jonathan Hickman who've crafted some incredible storylines showcasing them as a team. Because if you're going off the movies so far, they've just not been done justice. So let's look at how the Fantastic Four compare in the comics to the movies. Starting with the big man, Ben Grimm, the Thing. We touch on him in our Hulk Beaters video as someone who's kind of technically beaten a version of the Hulk, and whilst that may have a big old asterisk over the win, the man still deserves respect. Because let's look at him in the movies, starting with the first bash at the Fantastic Four, played by Vic Mackey himself, Michael Chiklis. This Thing is nicely smooth and rounded, kind of similar to most of the comics portrayals, except they haven't nailed that big old brow. In terms of his strength, he can take a hit from that massive truck pretty easily. It doesn't look as good as when Queen Maeve did it, but it was 14 years earlier. He's bulletproof, very handy, and he can do a nice lap pull down on this fire truck, although he is making a meal of it. But he does end up pulling the whole thing back onto the bridge, showing some impressive strength. Maybe he just needed the warm-up. Then we get some comedy. It's done for laughs, but to crunch a car into a ball and chuck it like that is no mean feat. Although surely Johnny Storm would have been knocked out by that number plate. Ben's later incapacitated here by Reed. Is that him being a bit weak, or is Reed being OP? More on that later. Oh, wait for it. Here's his catchphrase.
It's clobbering time.
After a nice Kool-Aid man move bursting through the wall, and a big punch sends Doom flying. But is the punch hard enough for someone like the Thing? Doom then easily rugby tackles him out a window later. Look, I know we need to respect Doom, we've got a video on him here, but should he be able to do that to the Thing? I don't think so. Another car fling later on though shows he is mighty strong. Doom not even trying to blast it or anything, the idiot. Plus he smashes Ben too easily here and is about to do him in. On to the sequel. Right off the bat we see how tough he is, although is his missus really not aware of the helicopter tail spinning towards her? Would you stand there like that just because you're blind? I don't think so. So Ben takes some rotors to the chops and rips the tail off. Nice! In terms of pressing strength, after the lap pull down last movie, he's military pressing the London Eye. But was Sue Storm helping? Who knows? We also have some more hilarious comic relief with him taking that massive slab to the face. Oh, jokes. So on to the doomed reboot, Fant4stic. I for one like Jamie Bell in this role, I've always liked him. There's not a huge amount of his powers on display in this one though, because it's a rubbish movie. But I do approve of the look. I think this is more believable as to how a rock monster Thing would look. He's apparently badass enough to kill 43 enemies of the United States, but they could have been harmless humans that he squashed like in these videos, not that impressive. He can rip a tank up and throw it though, and knock a car over. We see him land presumably from a great height and then smash a tree. And then in this scene from a trailer that didn't make it into the film, he definitely lands from a great height. Later he can smash rocks, but gets easily overpowered by Toby Kebbell's Doom and his telekinesis. He's got major strength to chuck a massive rock and then he belts Doom to deliver the final blow, but overall, we're not seeing what the boy can do. So let's talk the comics. The Thing's renowned as one of the heaviest hitters around, and he's obviously strong, but he's got some indomitable willpower as well. Yes, he's beaten a mind control Hulk using his willpower, but he's also stood up to the Champion, an elder of the universe who's obsessed with fighting. Video on those weird elders here. And the Champion had already beaten some big guns including Colossus, Sasquatch and Wonder Man, but the Thing goes the distance, prompting the Champion to state that he couldn't beat him. I mean, he'd literally beat the shit out of him, but Thingy wouldn't stop. Hardcore. He's also matched Namor for strength, even underwater. Friend of the show, Silver Surfer, recognised his strength and had to G himself up to match it. And one of Marvel's Superman knockoffs, Hyperion, said that his hits were like being hit by Thor. Ben has also knocked out a T-Rex, I don't know if you know, but they were pretty tough. And he once held back a spaceship, stopping it from taking off for a little bit. And back in the day, he lifted up an entire oil rig. And conveniently enough, one time they literally just said what he could bench. 100 tons apparently. There you go, numbers nerds. He's also very durable. He's always taking Hulk punches. And one time there were some Kree sentries that took down both She-Hulk and the Red Hulk very easily. And 4 of them started killing old Benny Boy, but when he saw the flaming 4 in the sky, indicating the return of the Human Torch, it G'd him up and he kicked the shit out of him. Hey, there's the catchphrase, yay. Finally, apparently, he's functionally immortal, as when he's in his Thing form, he doesn't age, go figure. So yes, while there are some impressive feats of strength in the movies, I think we can agree Grimm's got nerfed. What a surprise. Up next, let's do Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, a name that could only have been come up with in the 60s. So first up in the movies is Chris Evans, his first bash at being a superhero and a pretty good fit for Johnny Storm, I reckon. In the first one, as the film progresses, you don't really see how powerful he can be. The movie's just like, yeah, isn't fire cool? But there is the scene where he's being tested and he's hotter than anticipated and he melts the titanium box he's in. And he gets told that he can go supernova and be as hot as the sun, which means I'm really sorry, but I have to show this clip.
It's hotter than the sun!
So the potential is there to show his power. And when he finally nails flying, he can outrun a missile. And then at the end, fighting Doom, he's allowed to go supernova. And he melts him down with Sue helping to contain it. And it does show that the boy's got some power. You don't see a huge amount though in the sequel. He's fast enough to catch the Silver Surfer. I love that the Surfer has dodged all these buildings and then finally decides to warp through one. And then at the end, he's got some Super Skrull powers, which is pretty cool, and how he takes down Doom. Although the same bad guy? Come on. And you have to use the other catchphrase, Johnny. Flame on is bad enough.
It's clobbering time.
The reboot though, with the man, Michael B. Jordan, Wallace from The Wire. Now, for such a cool power, you really don't see much of it in the film again. You see him throw some fireballs, big whoop, and then he takes down a drone, and he does it travelling
2,000 meters in 6 seconds.
That's, wait a minute, 755 miles an hour. That's fast. But then we see him chuck a fireball at his sister. Well done, Johnny. And then he's taken down at the end by Doom pretty easily. What a shame. Because in the comics, he's pretty good. He can do things like melt a tank in seconds after She-Hulk chucks it at him. He can knock the Silver Surfer off his board, which is apparently very impressive. And he can control his flames pretty well. He can melt a man's armour off, but not hurt the man himself. He once trapped Titania by melting the debris that she was holding up. And in another run-in with the She-Hulk, he gives her a bloody heat stroke. He's very fast too. My favourite being when he just melts bullets that are being shot at him. Fuck yeah. And look, if he's already flamed on, then don't bother shooting him. He's too hot. You might as well be shooting a water pistol. He can do things like resist the power of a Hulk thunderclap. Not too shabby. And when he unleashes a Nova Flame in the comics, it's likened to a nuclear blast. And it can take out a chunk of that pesky annihilation wave. And lastly, nothing to do with his power, but he also sometimes looks very naked when flamed on. So another big nerf. That Nova in the first movie should have been a lot bigger, man. Okay, penultimate member, let's do Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic himself, in a first for this team, a name that has nothing to do with his powers. Wow, look, okay, we get it, you're the leader of the Fantastic Four. His powers being stretchiness and malleability, creating a challenge for modern day writers. How do you make that power remotely interesting or formidable? Oh look, he can turn into a wheel. So the movies, it's Eoin Griffith. He was hot stuff at the time after the TV show Hornblower. So yes, he's very stretchy, used to plenty of comedic effect. It's time for a comedy montage. Oh look, he's run out of toilet paper because he didn't check before he sat down, LOL. It means though when the Thing punches him, he's not affected. Later on, he pretty much incapacitates Ben Grimm, which is pretty impressive. But Thingy's not really as tough as he should be, is he? He uses the stretchiness to crush this postbox before slinging it at Dr. Doom, which is pretty good. Oh look, there's that wheel move from earlier. And then I find this move where he flattens himself out and covers up Doom a little bit weird if I'm being honest. But there's some skill on show here where he adapts his body into like a reverse water slide to direct the water at Doom. And we know how that ends. So sequel time now, we're back with the comedy. Even the music just screams comedy capers. But he's been a bit of a dick putting his bag in over there, to be honest. I'd be having a word with him if I was on that flight. The film really makes an effort to show how useful his power is in everyday situations. He can text super fast with his big long thumbs, he can dance with some sexy ladies in special ways, and presumably he's gone to the effort of making this shirt, pants and v-neck sleeveless sweater all made of the same super material that stretches with him. Okay. The London Eye scene later shows just how far he can stretch though, and it's a lot. We're talking hundreds of feet here. And then in comedy moment number 155 in the sequel, we see another example of his reflexive adaptability. His body will automatically change and absorb big hits like this giant slab of rock and the piece of wool, hitting him and him instantly becoming flat and not getting hurt. So it's reboot time. And now to be fair to Josh Trank's version, I do like the body horror elements to it, and the effects on how Reed's body stretches are really good. And a lot more just realistic, as much as you can be, than Tim Story's version. I also like that it's showcasing not just that he can stretch, but he can alter his body, so he can change his face to look like someone else. Very cool, if not done very well effects wise. The jungle fight showcases his abilities a bit more, using them in interesting ways, and his reaction time, dodging a stun gun thing. But in the terrible little bit of a fight with Doom at the end, he's dodging rocks, and it looks just so fucking choreographed, and he's got his little punches like Douse him in Street Fighter 2 that clearly do nothing. But I guess he's distracting Doom because he's got the smarts, right? Krasinski's version, I'm skipping over. World's smartest brain telling Wanda that Black Bolt's mouth can kill her. Nice one, dickhead. Now, Reed in the comics is talked about as being one of the smartest men alive, and he can build almost anything. And he's also got a history of fucking sick jokes, mate. Victor Von Doof, ho ho ho, got him. But look, we're focusing on his powers. He can obviously stretch, and he shows some decent strength with it as well. Punching grey gargoyle hard enough to break a wall, staggering a giant psycho woman. God, these psycho baddies are shit. He can carry the Thing with one arm, who's definitely a heavy fucker. And he makes the most of that stretchy durability too. When Wolverine is brainwashed and attacking him, his claws can't do anything because Reed keeps stretching to accommodate him. When Wolvie's son Daken has a go, again he can't cut him. It does seem to hurt him a little bit though. There's a freaky moment during Secret Invasion when a Skrull shoots him point blank and he turns into some spaghetti monster thing, just reacting to being shot. And an interesting use of his power in the comics once is when he increases his mass and strength, just like when Reed amped himself up like the Thing and staggered Onslaught. No mean feat. And look, a whole other video needs to be done on his intellectual feats, but he's a master of all kinds of sciences, and whilst not the biggest nerf, could have been better in the movies. Okay, last but definitely not least, it's Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, another name that could only have been come up with in the 60s. So as we'll see, some people rank her as the most powerful of the four in the comics. But in the movies, we've got Jessica Alba, look, perfectly good actress, great mum, but she's kind of just underserved to just being invisible lots. Yep, tick, invisible. Okay, we need a joke about her being naked. Maybe a gratuitous underwear shot? Yep, tick. We see some of her force fields containing fires, blasting Reed, blasting Doctor Doom. Or how about another sequence where she takes her clothes off again? Yay! At the end, she contains a big fire, but it gives her a nosebleed. Come on, she's better than that. In the sequel, she does seem to have more control. Oh, she can make a pimple disappear, of course. And containing that rogue chopper, although not enough to stop it ploughing into an unsuspecting Alicia Master's face. She can flatten Reed and turn him around, so yeah, obviously a load more control in this one. Oh, another naked scene, because Fox Studios, obviously. With the London Eye, she's holding that whole thing up, and I like the little force fields that help her when she's pushed out onto the water. It's a nice touch. Another nice touch is her turning the wall invisible to see the surfer getting roughed up, although it is a bit disturbing. And she whacks these two guys into mini force field bubbles, but then at the end, look, her powers aren't enough to stop her getting spiked. In the reboot, Kate Mara's up, and she's straight away turning herself and big things invisible, and she can gently budge a couple of those big things away from her, although again randomly in the trailer she does it loads better. She can effectively fly in her force field, but it's knackering her out. To be fair, in this one they're really showing them learning their powers though. Unfortunately at the end, Doom's telekinesis is dominating her force field, and it's only Reed pulling himself together that saves her, of course. But let's look at Susan in the comics. So like I said, some people rank her the most powerful of the four. Not in strength, obvs, or in smarts, obvs, but in her actual power. Both her invisibility and the force fields are all cosmic powered, don't you know? So yeah, she's obviously got the invisibility, the clues in the name, but the invisibility is so comprehensive that she can do things like hide a gun from the Silver Surfer before shooting him in the face. That is cold, Susan. She can become invisible to things like infrared scanners, much better than Kevin Bacon and his dick in Hollow Man. She can use it like a human x-ray machine on this little boy, and then to look at this homeless man's ribs, and then under the beard it's bloody no more. Ridiculous. As the comics go on, the writers realise they can be more scientific with it. Here she's changing the way she's interacting with the light wave to darken her hair and skin, very cool. But on a massive scale, she can go as big as making an entire planet invisible, like she did in Annihilation Scourge. And then there's the force fields, they're super tough. They can take hits from Green Scar Hulk and Galactus himself, that big handsome bastard. There was a time she shielded an underwater base for 17 hours through some serious Zen meditation. And she can borderline replicate the Green Lantern's powers and make constructs with it, like armour to punch up Namor, or swords to cut up big monsters. She's also got the control over it to put them inside people's, like when she threatened the Wizard to give him a heart attack and ended up making him faint. And she also made Deadpool's head pop once, but obviously he grew it back. One time Wolverine was being controlled by Hydra and went after the Fantastic Four. And he takes down the Thing and Johnny, but Sue rocks up with some force fields in his lungs and then on his optic nerves to blind him, incapacitating him so much that he just legs it. She's taken down all of the Avengers single-handedly more than once. She completely owns Doctor Doom. The woman's an absolute badass, especially when you threaten her kids. So of all the nerfs, what a surprise. Hollywood nerfed the female character the most. Worth noting that a whole nother video needs to be done on Sue and Reed's son Franklin, who's insanely powerful, especially when he grows up. And look, the Fantastic Four just have so much potential to be decent. So as I always say, there's hope now that Feige's involved. Look at that potential cast, I love those three. Hopefully the MCU is back on the up now after that weird little run of bang average movies. Anyway, thanks for sticking around if you did. There's plenty of other good content on the channel to check out. Like this video if you did, smash subscribe if you really loved it, and for now I've been Danny Baker, this is 6 Degrees, and I'll see you later.